Shadow of the Erdtree bosses chain combos endlessly. Their attacks are so relentless, such as to make player engagement difficult just for the sake of being difficult. So inaccessible, so hopelessly opaque, such as to be, in essence, no longer fun. Or so it's claimed. And not just by disgruntled randos, but by reputable channels with large audiences, sometimes even by channels and content creators who are sympathetic to the boss design of the base game of Elden Ring. This is particularly surprising and disheartening because, quite frankly, it is thoroughly untrue. The reality is that, while Shadow of the Erdtree bosses rely heavily on multi-hit combos that feature attacks in quick succession, and while the downtime between combos is somewhat narrow, perhaps even narrower than in the base game, they emphatically do not chain combos endlessly. There are generously paced, consistent windows for counterattacking. I'm going to show these windows in this video and explain where I think this misapprehension comes from. In short, I think the error in perception has a lot of factors, the main ones being a failure to understand the boss philosophy FromSoft has adopted in Elden Ring and Shadow of the Erdtree, failure to understand what individual combos entail, and failure to deploy good positioning. First of all, at the risk of both stating the obvious and being condescending, you're supposed to die when you play FromSoft games. They're supposed to be hard. That's what they're known for. I think there's this cycle that happens with these games where initially people forget this core mantra that death and difficulty are intrinsic to the sense of purpose and achievement. They become frustrated and impute their struggle to the quality of the boss design. As months go by and people become more intimately acquainted, opinions improve and some classics even emerge. Before we rush to judgment, we should try to be mindful of this pattern and of FromSoftware's philosophy. Miyazaki has articulated this philosophy as integral to his games for years now. The feeling of conquering a seemingly insuperable obstacle is not a bonus emotion to FromSoft games, it is at their very core. Now, I run a channel dedicated to these games, and for that reason I decided to no-hit the bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree as I went, offering the perspective immediately that might otherwise have taken several playthroughs to emerge. I am by no means suggesting that you need to no-hit a boss to appreciate its technical quality. What I am suggesting, however, is that the first initial scrap between you and the boss, in which you survive with a molecule of health and 0 crimson tears left, is unlikely to be a good gauge of whether a boss is poorly or skillfully designed, because it's typically possible to survive a boss with only a partial understanding of its nuances. This is a good thing for the sake of accessibility and playability, but it also means that it's an insufficient basis on which to stake claims about things like objective counterattack windows or the nature of combos. Maybe, when you play a FromSoft game, you can beat a boss on your first, third, or fifth try, in which case that is genuinely awesome and you should feel proud of yourself. But you're not entitled to beat them that quickly, and if you believe you are, you're probably tangling with the wrong franchise. Part of the difficulty curve with Shadow of the Erdtree bosses is identifying combos and windows for exploitation. Because Elden Ring in general utilizes irregular attack timing, and because Shadow of the Erdtree in particular keeps the windows between combos pretty tight, discerning where one combo begins and another ends can be difficult. If one doesn't have a clear sense of what moves a combo entails, and where any given move exists within a combo, then those counterattack windows might just feel like the typical pauses inside of a combo that Elden Ring uses to thwart you from spam rolling. Laboring under such a misimpression, it would then easily appear to you that bosses in Shadow of the Erdtree chain combos infinitely. It's therefore essential that one learn to recognize combos and their beginnings and ends. With few exceptions, the ends of combos provide an opportunity for counterattacking, definitively proving that Shadow of the Erdtree bosses do not chain combos without respite. You will see this in the footage playing throughout this video, but let's also examine a few examples. In the fight against Bale, you can see his right wing illuminate itself with an electrical charge before he slams it downward. If you're not familiar with his combo patterns, this can pose a problem. When this move is part of a combo, it's actually the last move in a 3-hit set. But when you see this move taking place after some downtime, he's actually going to just use it as a singular move. Now, incidentally, with this particular move, you can counterattack after either, but if you're unable to place the move mentally, it will be disorienting. You won't be sure if you can counterattack it because you have no cognitive atlas for it, and by the time you figure out that you're safe, the window for punishment will have expired. In the footage from this fight, you can use my counterattacks as anchors for the ends and initiations of individual combos. While they may be hard to see at first, looking at this footage, there are salient, easily exploitable gaps that occur with great regularity once you learn to recognize them. The contention that bosses endlessly string combos is patently and objectively false. Likewise, in the case of Mesmer, there are a number of combos that contain delays within them. These delays may create the impression that you're safe to punish, but because they're actually part of combos, they're going to be too abbreviated to avoid being counterattacked as you attempt your punishment. Note the delays inside the following combos that I'm going to show on the screen here. You need to understand the totality of the pattern to discriminate between a mid-combo delay and the genuine cooldown between the end of one combo and the beginning of another. Only the latter is safe to punish, consistently. There are times when mid-combo delays are long enough that you can get off, for example, a light attack, but for the sake of the theme of this video, which is, do they chain combos endlessly, you want to look for the ends of combos, which, as I said before, almost always present opportunities for counterattacking. Once you understand the difference between a mid-combo delay and the downtime at the end of a combo, you will see the great liberality of these opportunities in Shadow of the Erdtree fights. In the case of Rolana, she too uses sets of prescribed combos, and the arithmicality of them can once again conjure the false impression of a sort of ceaseless concatenation of attacks designed to screw players over. But deep learning, again, the core philosophy of FromSoft in the Elden Ring era, reveals that what we're actually experiencing is a single combo with pauses within it rather than multiple combos strung together. This combo here has a pronounced pause before her final two moves, the opposite directional downward dual sword swipes. When you know what you're looking at, you know the big punishment window is after those swipes, not during the fake-out pause before them. You can see throughout this footage a number of further instances in which one could easily mistake a single combo for being a raft of random unremitting attacks. A final case study to drive this whole point home is Midra, who more than any other boss presents a bounty of counterattack windows with clearly demarcated combo parameters. Midra is unusual in that the combos themselves have a relatively fast and regularized tempo, and this makes understanding when you're in the midst of one versus when you're outside of one much easier. But the key point here is that fundamentally, this is only a surface difference. Midra's moveset, his use of combos, then pause, then the resumption of a new combo, not the endless chaining of one, is homologous to the moveset of every other boss. As evidence of this claim, I broke down some data from my no-hit run against the major bosses, which I've inputted into this chart. I left off Putrescent Knight because my run against him was riddled with missed opportunities, the blame for which lays entirely at my feet. The rest were more optimized fights and therefore more reflective of the actual boss design. You can see here that Shadow of the Erdtree bosses fairly consistently allow you to counterattack on average of every 4 to 6 seconds without ever getting hit yourself. Midra might feel like the easiest boss to counterattack, but that's only because his combo endings are the most obvious. With deeper learning, you can see that the actual distance between Midra and a boss as complicated as Radahn is rather trivial. Shadow Tree Avatar stands out on here with an average of 1 hit per 8 seconds, but this is artificially inflated by the protracted downtime between his 3 phases. The one actual true outlier is Metier. Metier offers fewer counterattack opportunities not because she endlessly strings combos, but rather because she has so many moves that require running away while she does AoE attacks. When you're engaging with her at close range, however, you can see that she's just as punishable as the other bosses. Another source of misunderstanding, I believe, arises from poor positioning. The windows between combos in Shadow of the Erdtree are short. As I've demonstrated, they 100% exist, but they're also admittedly quite truncated, which is part of what makes this DLC challenging in all the right ways. But one consequence of this brevity is that if you're not positioned to take advantage of these windows, they're very likely to elapse before you can profit from them. Poor positioning will, therefore, engender the illusion of relentless attack chaining. Let's take Mesmer, Divine Dancing Lion, and Gaius as examples. In my no-hit fight against Mesmer, there were several instances in which I was poorly positioned and therefore missed a counterattack. You can see here that while a perfect window for punishment existed, my jump attack failed, and that was just enough time for him to re-engage. Likewise, you can see that in a number of cases, I rolled away from his attacks. Now, I was usually able to close the distance and still get off one counterattack, which itself speaks to the generosity of these windows. But had I rolled in a more controlled direction, rolled with him in some of these cases, I probably could have executed several light attacks instead of just one. So directionality and positioning are key factors in being able to exploit combo windows and even to detect them. When you fight Dancing Lion, the lightning phase may feel literally impossible to counterattack because of the delayed AoE lightning explosions on the ground. But when you realize that you merely need to move backwards throughout this phase, you will actually uncover a number of opportunities for punishment. I'll definitely admit that this phase features more evasion than the rest of the fight as a whole demands, but it is conversely not the case that all you can do during the lightning phase is evade. In the fight against Gaius, we have to distinguish between combos and one-move positional punishments. Gaius has been designed to prohibit players from spamming his booty, and they have done this by implementing a backward kick that's triggered by your presence in his rear quadrant. If you were to spend a lot of time dodging his combos towards his rear, you'd be evading a combo and potentially immediately walking into a kick. This would very understandably cause you to think that the boss was capable of almost endless attack chaining. In reality, however, the poor positioning of the evasions is merely triggering a conditional attack designed to keep you out of certain vulnerable areas for too long. If you were to roll that very same combo in a different direction, there would be no backward kick, and the clear downtime between combos would be as evident with Gaius as it is with every other boss. To step back, you don't have to like how Shadow of the Erdtree bosses are designed. That's purely the realm of the subjective, and no one has a right to infringe on your subjectivity. But we should all be on the same page about what we're basing our opinions on. Endless combo chaining does not exist in Shadow of the Erdtree, period. Counterattack windows are brief but abundant. It's up to you whether learning the signs is worth the payoff. I certainly think it is. Thanks for watching.